Thank you for joining us for this webinar. Let's go ahead and get started in about a minute. Before we get started, we want to do a sound check. If you can hear our voice loud and clear, please type yes in the question box that's located on the top right-hand corner of your screen. That's what you will use to ask your questions. And by the way, we'll have a Q&A session towards the end of the webinar, and then after we discuss what we need to discuss. All right, great. So it looks like the sound is good. All right, well, thank you for joining us for this webinar. I hope you've had a chance to look at some of our websites, some of our properties. We have multifamily properties down in Texas. Hope you've had a chance to look at some of the videos that we've posted, showing the kind of rehabs that we do and all that. But we'll discuss some of that in this webinar as well. So let's get started. So in this webinar, we're obviously going to be discussing who's the key principal and how one can be a key principal on a multifamily project. So we'll discuss several concepts throughout this webinar. And like I said, if you have any questions, I would recommend keeping them towards the end, and then our team will be able to answer those questions. So first of all, our company is called Three Pillars Capital Group, for those of you that didn't know, and the website is threepillarscapitalgroup.com. It's founded by Josh Welch. He's the founder and managing principal of Three Pillars, just over $10 million in assets under management as of now. We recently won the 2018 Asset Manager of the Year Award and nominated for the 40 Under 40 Award by the Houston Apartment Association. So a lot of our rehabs, we've taken properties that were, let's just say they needed a lot of work. They needed a lot of interior rehab, a lot of exterior rehab, and we were able to take the rents and in many cases almost double them. So we'll talk about that. So anyway, we got recognized by the Houston Apartment Association for improving the community where the property was located. So the main strategy for Three Pillars is to find opportunistic class B and C properties and look for value add, where you can add value to the property, whether through management or through better operations, better policies, and obviously, improving the actual appeal of the property, both interior and exterior. Fernando is our rehab manager, our construction manager. He manages all of the material and labor, sourcing all the material, managing the projects in terms of rehabs. So as some of you might know that, every time a lease expires, you renovate the apartment and you get a new tenant. So a lot of work goes on behind the scenes in order to make sure that that happens in a timely manner. And Fernando handles that. And then we have Lucas, who's our director of acquisitions. He manages sourcing deals for us. So we have anywhere in our pipeline 15 to 20 projects that we're looking at to acquire. I'll introduce Lucas to you in a few slides in a couple minutes. And then Sergio is the board of director. He's an asset manager from Europe, and he brings a lot of the capital, a lot of the equity for our deals. So we'll discuss this also in a few minutes. And then as far as the actual operations and the rehab, we manage that all in-house. So we don't sub out any of the work in terms of, let's say day-to-day maintenance like plumbing, electricals, what have you. So all that is done in-house, including the renovations and the construction part. So let's move it along. So let's talk about a few of those properties that we talked about. So in that over $10 million portfolio, there are several properties. So I'll talk about a few of them and discuss, kind of go over some of the photos and the work that was done and the value that was created for the tenants and investors of that property. So first case study number one was Casa Roble Apartments, and it was acquired by a very hands-off absentee owner. And the property needed a lot of work, both inside and outside. And because the property was in such rough condition, he had old tenants that he didn't even want to turn over. They were paying a very low average rent per unit. So it was just completely hands-off, very third-party managed by a third-party property manager, whose motivations oftentimes are not aligned with the owner of the property. So the goal by acquiring this property was to completely turn around and provide a place that people would actually want to live at. So here are some of the photos from the before and after rehab. Here's the kitchen. So we put in backsplash, granite, and new kitchen cabinets, new flooring. Here's the living room. So you can see it's a complete turnaround from the, you can look at the ugly flooring, the walls that have holes and bad patch-up jobs. bad baseboard. So lighting. So we fix all that with the lighting, the flooring, new paint. So we have, it seems it seems very simple on the surface, but once you start doing it in terms of managing crews, managing multiple people and schedules, and making sure that the work starts as soon as the tenant vacates the unit, and that a new tenant's in as soon as the rehab is already done. So anyway, we'll kind of glance over some of that stuff in this webinar. So here's some of the results of the rehab that was performed on that property that we just talked about. The rents were increased almost 80–90%. The net operating income was up almost 2.5 times, and they set a new standard in that submarket for competition to follow. So this property was in the southeast part of Houston, and if you look at if anyone is buying a property in that area, and if you look at the competing rents, right, when you do your market research, you're looking at the competing rents, you will see that this property has the highest per square foot rent from any property in that submarket because of the position that they were able to bring the property to. So TPCG has a very good understanding of the local market, both for Class B and Class C property types. And we're now starting to buy out competing properties in that area. So we've already started actually acquiring properties with rents that are under market in that submarket, and we're starting to buy those properties. So we've also innovated on the way the leasing is done. So, a lot of leasing, that's the lifeblood of any property's new leases, right? And renewals. So we have innovated on the way we lease out our units as well. So we'll, just to give you an idea, that's, we're always looking to innovate on what other people are doing and improve the process on that. So we'll talk about some of those things in a few minutes. As far as revenue and expense, so typically you might have heard, when you're looking to underwrite a property, they will say, okay, well, automatically cut your NOI in half, that's your margin. We operate at a better margin. So this property specifically operates at a 27 to 30% margin. The rest of the properties, I would say they're averaging closer to 40-ish%, just over 40%. So anyway, this average, they were able to create this big of a jump because the rents that they were able to, almost double. Like I said, they took the rents from almost, I think it was $495 to about $900 to $950. So that, but there's a lot of other things you can do instead of just increasing the rents. You can cut the expenses. You can work on the utilities. And it's one thing to reduce the rates on the electricity and water. It's also about how do you allocate your salaries to the management staff, to the maintenance staff. So we had different strategies that we were able to achieve that and get that 27–30% expense ratio. The second property was called Rio Roble Apartments. It was called Allendale Arms Apartments. We changed the name to Rio Roble, and it had the same story. It was poorly managed by the previous owner. It was none of the interior work had been done. The exterior was in bad shape, so we took over. I'm not going to say it's easy, but it was pretty standard to go in, do the work, let the old tenant leave, if there were month to month, or so a lot of times, and you might be wondering, in the East Coast and West Coast of this country, there are very strict tenant laws, but in Texas, if you have a month-to-month contract, you can give the tenant a 30-day notice to vacate, and then you can tell them to leave the property, and then you can renovate the unit, right? Or you let their lease expire whenever it expires, and then as those leases start expiring, you turn over the units by doing the work, both interior and exterior. So we were able to do this on Rio Roble Apartments as well. So we had a few individuals that joined us as key principals on these properties, and we'll discuss that process in a few minutes. Here are some of the photos from Rio Roble Apartments. And you can see this all also on the website, which is incomepropertiesportfolio.com. And then the third case study was Rio Sereno Apartments. It's a 42-unit mix of 2-bed and 2 one-bedroom units. Same story, absentee owner, but it was in better condition than the previous 2 properties. So, it still needed an upgrade of the interior. So you need to modernize the interior with new flooring, new lighting, new paint schemes, that sort of stuff. And the exterior too, same thing, better landscaping, better paint on the exterior, on the brick and the wood siding and all that good stuff, that it creates a more aesthetically appealing property. And that's what we did with this. And we were able to increase rents also about 20–25% on this. And we had a few individuals join as key principals, and we'll discuss this in a few minutes. Here are some of the photos from this property, from Rio Sereno Apartments. And like I said, you can see some of the highlights on incomepropertiesportfolio.com. So if you actually go to incomepropertiesportfolio.com, the website, you'll be able to see. So we actually started doing podcasts with a lot of our partners from CBRE versus different insurance companies, so forth. So we're going to start updating that, so you'll be able to see that. But as far as the portfolio of the properties, you can see photos. If you keep scrolling down, you can see who the partners were on those properties, and you can see photos and videos for the property as well. So that's something for you to look at. All right, now let's talk about the opportunities to get selected as key principal. So you obviously have got emails. You're a part of our network. I hope you have attended one of our local events. If not, there's one coming up this month. So feel free to attend that. But a key principal is something that we talk about a lot. And for us, we want to select individuals as key principals who we see they're going to add long-term value to us. And we'll talk about obviously what a key principal is and what they do. So one example is Prasad. He's a key principal from Seattle, and he was a key principal in one deal, and then he's been a part of every deal after that in different capacities, more as a general partner. And so we want to see long-term value from an individual when we determine if they want to be if they would be a good key principal or not. So we obviously determine who's going to be a key principal or not. That's based on our discretion. And the window is very small. So we come from a hedge fund background, so we're able to raise a lot of capital from our network of silent investors and wealthy investors. But we would rather work with a key principal if we feel that they would add more value than, say, a silent investor. So this is something that we'll talk more in a private discussion. And obviously, the key principal is part of the ownership team and sharing the profit. So we'll discuss that also more in private discussions. I do see that a few questions are coming in. I would recommend to keep those questions for another 10 minutes, and then we'll jump into Q&A. So let's talk about why is being a key principal important. Now, obviously, let's talk about the barriers to entry in multifamily. Obviously, equity is the first thing, right? Raising capital for any property. If you don't have, let's say, a good network of friends and family or a good professional network, whatever, if you have to raise, let's say you're buying a $7 million property, raise $2 million. For a lot of people, that's difficult a lot of times. And even if you can get it done once, the challenge is to do that over and over again so you can actually grow a portfolio. So that's one. Deal flow. In this market, every market that we look at is competitive, right? Finding good deals in this market that makes sense, on a cap rate basis or on a cash yield basis going in is very, very difficult. And if you've been active in multifamily, we don't have to tell you how difficult that is. You can just talk to your brokers and you'll see the results, right? The other thing is investors and lenders. When you're working on a multifamily property and you approach an investor or lender, the first question they will ask you is, what's your track record? Have you ever done this before? So a key principal is able to say, yes, they have. And that's one benefit that a KP gets out of being a key principal on one of our projects. Obviously, you will understand how deal sourcing works. So we have Lucas Fertitta. I mentioned he's our director of acquisitions who brings the off-market deals. So you'll understand how the deal sourcing works behind the scenes, right? So all of our deals are off-market, private negotiations. You'll understand that. Raising capital is hard. We discussed that. So a lot of our key principals are getting access to our investor network, and that's something we'll talk about in a few minutes as well. And then the biggest thing is obviously, we discuss some of the projects that we have done, the projects that we continue to do. So you'll have an experienced team to fall back on. Obviously, when you're doing let's say you do a multifamily deal, and let's say you're struggling with the leasing or the project management of the construction of the rehab, there's a lot that can go wrong, and you don't want to be in a position where you're like, oh no, what do I do now? At least if you're partnered up with a team before, you'll understand that process. A lot of successful syndicators that we know, and these people own 1,000, 2,000, more than 10,000 units. Almost everyone started with partners by partnering up with 2-3 people because it naturally gives you more confidence, right? So that's what a key principal gets out of it. So, like I said, you get a sense of ownership, and you're building your portfolio. You get instant credibility and track record, and this can be used. So one of our partners, Pat McCarley, he was from Casa Roble, and you can see his photo on the Income Properties Portfolio website. He's actually now doing his own deal. So he was able to take that experience and the benefit that he got and translate that into doing his own deal. So anyway, so as a key principal, what's a key principal really doing? So you're assigned tasks every 5 weeks, and you're rotated through different tasks. So let's talk about that in a little more detail. So let's say we're closing on a property. In fact, we are closing on a property right now. It's a Freddie Mac deal. We did it with LMI Capital, and we have a few key principals on it. So every 5 weeks, a key principal is going to be given a task that we determine that we need help with. So the benefit to us, 3 pillars, is that we get to delegate that task to the key principal. That allows us to focus on, either sourcing more deals, working on the big picture stuff. The key principal is getting to execute on that task, which allows them to execute in a real world environment and get their hands dirty. So these tasks are designed keeping in mind that our KPs are from different cities. And like I said, Prasad's from Seattle. We have key principal from Washington, D.C., New York. So the tasks that we have, they're designed keeping in mind that these can be done from different cities. Now, if somebody says, oh, it's good to be in the same city. Well, our office is in Houston, Texas, and our properties are in Houston. But just imagine a 50-unit building. We ourselves don't go to that 50-unit building. There's really not much for us to do. We're not going to go and stand in front of the property and just observe it. We have policies in place. We have a management team in place to make sure things are done the way we want them to. So being in the same city is honestly not a big requirement. And we have KPs who successfully, they are doing tasks and they're adding value to us, right? So that's the whole benefit to us, is that what value do we see in a key principal executing and bringing to a deal that we're working on? What value can they bring? So we design tasks that we can assign to them. So every 5 weeks, you get assigned a new task, and it's designed to give you exposure to different parts of running a property, and it adds most value to us, right? So by the time you've rotated through a list of tasks over, say, the next 12 months or 18 months, you would have gone through different operations, whether it's leasing. Actually, let's talk about a few things, right? So obviously there's the leasing process, the rehab. You want to know how to source granite countertops, flooring, appliances. What are we paying per square foot for these materials? All those things make a big difference. Reducing the water usage to reduce expenses and increase the NOI. Staying on top of competitors. So let's say you want a property in a market, you want to know what your competition is doing in terms of what amenities are they offering, what upgrades are they offering in terms of flooring or stainless steel appliances and so forth. You want to know these things. So we have our key principals work on all these different tasks, or negotiating better rates with utility providers, working on software and sourcing new resources to streamline the operations. How does a work order get taken care of? So when a tenant has a work order, how does that get processed internally and get to the maintenance man who then executes on the work order? So there's always ways to improve the efficiency of the process, and that's what a key principal is helping us with. So every 5 weeks, like I said, you're rotated into these different tasks, and obviously all of this is done under our guidance. So we're never going to say to a key principal, "Hey, here's your task. Go, throw you in the deep end." We're not doing that. Everything is done under our framework, under our guidance, because remember, at the end of the day, we're the ones signing the note. It's our reputation on the line. So we want to make sure that the property is well taken care of and the tasks are done as we expect them to. Obviously, if a task is not done by a KP for whatever reason, we'll make sure that it gets done. But we give KPs the opportunity. So we want to see key principals take initiative, take that first step. And there are key principals that are doing that, and it's adding tremendous value to us because it allows us to free up our time because we get to delegate that task. Okay, so I talked earlier that a key principal does get access to our investor network. So as you start working with us and as you start working on the tasks, we actually give you access to our investor network. And you know that real estate is a relationship business. It's all about building relationships, whether it's with investors or multifamily owners. So you start getting access to that. And this will eventually allow you to start your own deals. So if you find, let's say you're making relationships with people in our investor network, and you find 10 people and you find your own deal and you say, hey, now I've got 10 investors too, great, go do that deal. We would love to see that. In fact, we have one key principal who's in the process of considering his own deal, and we're going to bring most of the capital. So that's some of the benefits that a key principal would be entitled to, depending on how things go with them. Here are some examples of key principals. I mentioned that there was one from New York, Tom Inman. He was a KP on a 25-unit deal. Here's Chris Troutner from Washington, D.C. He was a key principal also on a 25-unit deal. In fact, he wants to be a general partner on the next few deals that we're working on, and we have a great relationship with Chris. So if you're ever in D.C. and you go to the next event, say hi to Chris. And then we have Kyle, and then Kyle is the one who is actually considering buying his own property here in Houston, and that's the one that I was talking about that we're going to help with the capital aspect. And in fact, we're the ones who brought the deal to Kyle. And again, that goes back to the relationship aspect, is that we have an excellent relationship with Kyle, who's an attorney in Houston, and now we're bringing the deal to them because they have the capability to do that. So And then here's another KP, Bharat from Virginia, also a great guy. If you're going to go to the next, I think it's the North Virginia event, you'll be able to meet Bharat there. All right, let's get a few words in from Josh. I know I've spoken a lot. Let's do some introductions, and then we'll jump right into the Q&A. So let me get Josh on the line. Hey, Josh.
Hey, everybody. Can you hear me? All good?
Yep.
Okay, great. Just want to thank everybody for attending the webinar. Hopefully you guys are learning quite a bit. And, one thing I wanted to say about the key principles we work with is it's not everybody that has come onto our team. It's been a very select process, and there's been some chemistry there. So I would want to encourage anybody that is looking to investigate that further, to realize there's a chemistry to it. We don't work with everybody. There has to be mutual benefit for us, 3 pillars, and what we're trying to accomplish. Our goal is to get to next year 750 units. I don't think we were talking about that earlier, but that is our goal for 2019. So we have a very aggressive goal, and we're doing very, very well, 10 million in assets already. And the key principles are definitely adding value to us in certain ways. We can delegate the tasks, and I won't go over everything that we've already discussed because, it's in the webinar. You can refer back to that after we're done here. But I just wanted to say that, I encourage you to definitely, take a look, investigate further, ask any questions you need to. And I guess with that, I'll leave it there, and we'll continue on.
Thank you, Josh. All right, let's move on. All right, and then we talked about Lucas. So Lucas is our director of acquisitions. He came on a few months ago, and he has a decade plus experience with Houston multifamily owners and investors. And the result of bringing Lucas on board has been, so the deal that we're closing on right now, it's like I said, it's a Freddie Mac deal. Competing properties are trading at $85,000 a door. We're buying it at $62,000 a door. So that was, again, because it was an unsophisticated owner. I guess he wasn't on top of his competition. He didn't know what the market comps are. So, that's the benefit of getting a deal off market through a private negotiation versus saying, hey, I'm going to go to LoopNet or, Redfin or some other crappy website, or I'm going to wait for Marcus and Millchap to call me, or I'm going to wait for my local multifamily broker to call me with a special property that he has for me. I mean, that's not going to happen. So anyway, let's get a quick word in from Lucas. Hey, Lucas.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me. So yeah, I just want to give you all kind of small little background of my experience. I started Multifamily Investments as an associate working for Tarantino Properties. They're a local firm here in Houston. Gradually moved up to working with Marcus Millchap in the Houston office, and then Houston Income Properties, which is also a well-known real estate firm. Literally, my day-to-day activities was to source multifamily properties day in, day out, procure, negotiate contracts, but most importantly, it was to maintain long-term relationships with owners and other individuals in the commercial business sector. I've closed tens of millions of deals in the last few years, and I've been up and down the cycles. Over the course of a decade, I've perfected my technique to engage and produce more deals. This comes with not only drive, repetition, but also passion. I really do enjoy reconnecting with clients and creating new relationships. We are in a relationship business after all, so it comes a long way in our industry. The biggest value that I add to this firm are the long-term relationships, the connections, and the training that I've received from my past roles. I've been on the other side of the spectrum. For an example to give you guys is during my times at Marcus & Millchap, it's kind of known as a Shark Tank per se. I would maintain about 60 calls a day on average just to build up my stream of business. Now, with the change in roles, I can use the same tactics and utilize all the 10 years of relationships to bring 3 pillars more business. Right now we're looking about 3 to 4 new deals a week that I'm procuring off market through all private discussions. So with this speed, we will be able to have more investments under our belts. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you, Lucas. So, so that's, again, I think, sourcing off market deals and working, directly with the owners, just, cutting out the middleman, the broker out of the process. I think that definitely adds a lot of value because, and think about it this way, right? When a broker is representing a seller, their goal is to get the maximum dollar out of the buyer, correct? So we're eliminating that process right out of the way. So we're able to create that value. Obviously, I can't talk about deals that we're working on right now, but, we're seeing the same thing occur over and over again. So anyway, that was our team, and that was those are some of our properties. So the last thing is, so we do have it, like I said, I have mentioned this in the past in the webinar, that the key principals can transition. The next stage for a key principal after being on a deal with us is to transition into the role of a general partner on the next deal. So again, this purely depends on chemistry, likability, and getting along as a team. I mentioned Prasad. He started as a key principal, and then he was invited to be a general partner on a bigger deal, and that was because we have great chemistry, great connection, just like we have with Tom and Chris and Kyle and some of our other key principals. And it really comes down to communication, right? I mean, it's like, how often are you communicating with the team? Obviously, it's anyway. So you get the gist of that. Let's talk about the key principal selection process. Like I mentioned, we can't obviously work with everyone. It really depends on us. It's our discretion. We want to see what value they're going to add. Everything is based on private discussion. So we want to have conversations with you privately with our whole team. And we want to see where there's a fit, where, what the visions are, what the goals are. Some people say, honestly, it really depends on the goal, what your vision is. If you want to scale a portfolio, do you want to do multifamily deals? Or are you just looking to hit a certain income level? What is your goals, right? It all starts with that. So let's start with that. And so there's an application process, and then we have a few interviews and a few conference calls with our team. You already met Josh and Lucas. So the way to get started is, for those of you that do want to be considered as a key principal, you would go to incomepropertiesportfolio.com, click on Become a Principal. Let me just show it to you, right? It's going to be easier. So you're going to go to incomepropertiesportfolio.com. You're going to click on Become a Principal, and then you're going to click on the key principal form, and you can kind of read what we just talked about. So whatever you see in this video are things that we've already talked about in this webinar, so you kind of don't have to read the whole thing. So anyway, fill out this form. It's on the 3 Pillars website. Once you fill that form out, we will get that in our email, and then we'll take the communication with you further after that. So it just asks you basic questions like, what's your multifamily goal for this year? What does partnering up mean to you? Why are you looking to actually partner up with someone? What do you hope to get out of this? And things like that. So get that, your contact, your email, so we can reach out to you. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll take it from there. But yeah, let's jump into the question and answer session now. So whatever questions you have based on what we have talked about, feel free to type it in, and we'll do our best to answer those questions. And by the way, if we're not able to answer your question in time, please don't take that personally. We will try our best to answer every question, and if we don't see it, just type it again so it comes to the top. Thank you so much. We had a question here if a KP is signing the note, signing the mortgage note, and the KP is not signing the mortgage note, we are. So we don't need help with that. We take care of all that. So I hope that answers that question. We had a question from Stephen Harding about a few questions that a KP would be assigned. So we did talk about that. I'm not sure if you're able to hear that. Some of the tasks, like I said, so the last task, I believe, for one of the properties was working to reduce the water usage. And believe it or not, it was reduced by almost 25 to 30%. And that lowered the water bill. And by lowering the water bill, you increase the NOI. So that, that was value right there. So that's just one example of a task. We had a question from Lamar. What experience do you look for? So that's a really good question. So generally, okay, so a good key principal would be someone who really wants to do real estate. They've taken steps. We don't necessarily want to see that you've already done a multifamily property, because we understand it's really difficult. But if you've done one, it definitely helps. It doesn't hurt. Maybe you've done a few single family homes and you're looking to jump into multifamily. You want to make the switch, or you've been educating yourself aggressively and you've been reading, watching videos, but you just have not been able to take action. That's also a good step, because it shows that you're taking that initiative, but you have a few stumbling blocks. That's fine. We had a question from Ryan. It's how often do we consider key principals? Honestly, it really depends. You can never go wrong with good partners. So I guess the more outreach we have and finding good partners, I would say that's a good thing. So I would say the more we can do, the better, and that's going to expose us to more of the partners that we actually want to work with. We had a question from Beth. The question was, how many hours does a KP need to commit as a KP? So honestly, Beth, it really depends on your schedule. So there have been instances where a key principal has not been able to do some of the tasks, maybe because of their work, or because they have a different goal. We can't control that. Our job is to give the task. And like I said, if a task is not done, don't think that that's going to hurt the property, because at some point in time, we will take over and we will get that job done, right? Like I said, it's our reputation on the line. We're the ones signing the notes, our face is on it. We have to make sure that performance is there, but we want the KPs to participate because that will help us. We had a question about the compensation structure as far as a KP and a GP from Sean. So Sean, we'll discuss that more in private conversation. Obviously, that's not something we can discuss in an open forum. And honestly, it depends deal by deal. So I mean, it wouldn't make sense to give you a one fits all answers. We had a question from Julian, is being a KP something you can do full time? And yes, Julian, the answer is yes. I mean, we do have, like I said, KPs from different cities who actually have full-time jobs right now. So, and they're able to manage that. So like I said, I mean, if we're giving you a task, you obviously have to prioritize the schedule on your own time to do that. But, it's nothing that would take, 10 hours, 20 hours a week. It's nothing like that. One thing I do want to mention is that, we have almost 20,000 people in our network, and we have people who watch videos on all these different forums. They've attended all these classes. I'm not going to mention the fee that you guys have paid for some of these classes, but they still have not been able to do a deal. And I think the biggest barriers, again, it's, if let's say a Lindahl or a Sumrall Group or Lifestyle or whatever you've done, and by the way, we don't charge any fees. That's not our business. Again, we're looking for good partners, and I've mentioned some of those. We're not in the fee business. That's not what we do. But some of those programs, like your Lifestyles or Sumrall or Lindahl, whatever, people have paid those fees and they're still not getting a deal done. And the problem is that, everyone's competing against each other because they're looking for the same metrics on a deal, the same kind of, IRR or yield on a deal, and everyone's competing with the same system in the same system. Okay, there's just not enough deals to go around. So you have to really set yourself apart. And a lot of people, they see being a key principal with us with 3 pillars as a way of getting a deal done. So that's something that really that I think the key principals like. We had a good question here from Donna. The question is, are you targeting certain geographical areas? Right now we're trying to stick in Houston, but what we're starting to see is that by working with KPs, we're starting to see deal activity in different cities. We're starting to see some in Seattle, some in Dallas, some in Miami. So we're starting to see that, and that is something definitely on the table for us to do. And we had a comment here from Robert. He agreed that he's part of the Sumrall's foundation, quote unquote, foundation program. It's great, right? You pay these fees, you pay these big $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 fees, great revenue for them. In fact, we know, actually I shouldn't say this, but we know some of the founders of one of the names that I mentioned, and it's amazing how it works. But it's anyway. So our way, a key principle is getting a deal under their belt. They're able to say to the investors and the lenders and put it on their resume that they've gotten a deal done, right? And you're learning the operations. That's how it works. A few people had a few question about the link to start that private conversation. I guess I wasn't clear. Let me just do it again. So you'll go to incomepropertiesportfolio.com, the website, and then you will click on Become a Principal. And then you will fill out the key principal form, which is right here. And you'll fill that out. It's a short form. And once that reaches us, we will start a private conversation. So, and like I said, this is not for everyone. I mean, it's really for someone who has been through the process multiple times of, maybe you've been watching a lot of videos about everything, but until you take action, you haven't done anything, and you're at that point where you want to do that, we should talk. We had a question from Gilda about the experience and key qualities that we look for. I believe I mentioned a few of those. And like I said, we want to see that initiative that you've taken, whether it's through learning or through execution. Even if you partner up with other people on a few deals, but you're not getting a deal done now, that's fine. That's good. And I apologize if you did type your question a few minutes ago, please type it in again, and we'll send it. I'll answer your question. So we did have a question from Frederick about the deal flow that we're seeing. So Lucas did mention that we're seeing a lot of deal flow, right? So we're seeing a lot of off-market deals, and obviously we're at a capacity too where we cannot do every single deal. So what we're starting to do now is, at least for the select key principals, we're starting to give them the deal so that they can do it on their own. So if someone has been a key principal with us, we see that they have the capability, they have the will, and they want to do their own deal. We can say, okay, well, Lucas found this great deal for us, but we're pursuing these two other deals. We can't do this third deal right now. Let's give the third deal to these key principals so they can do it on their own, completely on their own, under their own name, right? So that's also an opportunity that a key principal will have. Question from Kim. Yes, Kim, I'm seeing your questions. I apologize. Please type in your question. I will type in the link that we had shown to start the private conversation, so you can fill out that form that we talked about. We had a question from Mel also again about the return or the basic type of returns. Again, Mel, we can't talk about that in an open forum, but if we feel necessary, we will discuss that with you in a private conversation. We had a question from Francis. If the KP is selected, what is their role? Like I said, every 5 weeks, a KP is given a task that we determine that the property would benefit from the most, and then the KP will execute on that task and work with us hand in hand to complete that task, and then we can obviously use the results of that task on the property, which is going to benefit the property, right? So that's a good summary. We had a question from Nicole. She works for a management company. Would this be a conflict of interest? I don't see why not. It would not be. We don't have anything to do with that, but it wouldn't be. We had a question from Sean as far as the property range. So Sean, right now the property range I would say is about 40 to 120. So we have one, it's a 96 unit, 102 unit, and a couple of 60, 70 unit projects in our pipeline, all accumulating about 15 to 20 million in value. So we're still negotiating the terms on a few of those and want to consider which ones we want to do. We had a question here, it's a good question. Would you consider a married couple? And the answer is yes. In fact, indeed, we do have a married couple, and you can see that on the website. Raj and Jeremy from Toronto, you can see their video. In fact, if you go to the homepage of the website, you can see that right here. These are a couple from Toronto. We had a question from Julian, if these tasks can be done remotely, and yes, the tasks can be done remotely. Like I said, and again, I'll repeat this again, right? Our properties are in Houston, our head office is in Houston, one part of Houston. We don't go to the properties every week. In fact, we don't even go to the properties on a weekly or bi-weekly basis because, like I said, we have policies in place to make sure that the operations are taken care of. There's really nothing for the ownership to actually physically go to the property and do. You can't. Maybe you can walk the property if you have the itch to do that, but it's not going to achieve anything. But as long as you have good operating procedure and policies in place to make sure that the quality, both interior, exterior, tenant satisfaction, all that is taken care of, there's really no need to be physically on the property. But we do invite KPs to obviously tour the property, so that's something that we'll discuss also privately. We had a good question here from Ryan about Class B and C properties and if we're partial to them. And the reason for that is, Ryan, Class B and C are more recession-proof properties. And let's say there's an economic downturn after 5 or 2 years, right? Whatever. Nobody knows, right? And if that happens, people are usually first to downgrade from a Class A to a B, B to a C. Now, just imagine a sub-market where there are 10 Class C properties. And if your Class C property happens to be the best one, both aesthetically, operating well, you're going to have no problem finding tenants because in a bad economy, people need to stay there. In a good economy like Houston, especially with a growing population, growing jobs, you're never going to have a problem finding that. In fact, if you look at the occupancy trends from Bracadia over the last 10 years, you will see an uptick in occupancies. And right now, I think the average right now is about 91%. So that's something that bodes well for Class B and C properties. We had a question from Francis. This is a good question. In evaluating properties, do you use CoStar, Axiometrics? Yes, we do use some of those. You know, we use a lot of different software and tools. Apartment data services, CoStar is obviously one. Axiometrics, Real Analytics. And not only that, you know, we actually go to the properties themselves. You know, we will comp shop those properties. You know, we'll pretend to be a tenant, and either us or someone from our team will go. We'll make notes. We'll look at, you know, what are they offering? Is it backsplash in the kitchen, granite countertops? What kind of lighting do they have? What kind of amenities do they have on the exterior? What rents are they offering? Are they offering concessions? And we'll make notes about every little thing, and we'll say, okay, how can we one up those guys, right? So that's the whole thing. We had a question from Tyler about how's the compensation for a KP determined. Again, we'll discuss that in a private conversation, but just know that a KP is obviously at a higher level than a regular silent investor. So a silent investor in real estate world is known as a limited partner, and a key principal is above a limited partner, where a key principal is actually getting to share in some of the carried interest portion that the general partnership earns. We got a question if KPs are involved in bi-weekly or monthly calls. So we don't usually do that because we have tried that. And it's really difficult to get everyone at the same time, but we are very active with communicating with our KPs, those who are responsive. So, you know, there will be times where KP is not responsive, and, you know, obviously there's nothing we can do about that, but for the ones that are responsive, we're very, very active in communicating. We had a question from Sean as far as what's a KP on a general partner. So Sean, a general partner is someone who is part of the LLC of the management that owns the property. But again, I think this is something that would be best reserved to discuss in a private conversation. We had a really good question from Millard. If a KP has access to the TPC software tools, we can make some of them available. For example, we use Resman, and we're now looking to work with 365 Connect. So, you know, a KP will definitely have access to some of that, to some of those softwares to play around. And, you know, that's a whole beast in itself, is understanding how the software works, and because that controls your leasing, your management, your financials, your accounting, your rent rolls, all that good stuff. We had a question if we're similar to a REIT, a real estate investment trust, and the answer is no. We had a question from Donna if we're looking to work with KPs in the Phoenix area, and the answer is yes. We had a question if the KPs are responsible to find investors. The answer is no. As mentioned, Sergio, our board director, he is well connected with the Houston community, and in Houston we have obviously there's this old network of wealthy investors. We raise money from them, and Sergio is responsible to raise capital for that. And we have obviously our own backgrounds and friends and family. So no, we're not. You know, obviously, if a KP has a friend or family that wants to invest, we can, you know, potentially discuss that. Again, so the time right now is 8:50. We have some good questions coming in, so I'll keep it open for another 10 minutes while I answer these questions. But again, if you want to start a private conversation after this webinar is over, you would go to incomepropertiesportfolio.com and you would click on the Become a Principal link. And from there, you will click on the Key Principal form so that we can get your form in our email and start a private conversation. So do that. We had a question from Sean. Why does Three Pillars need a KP or a GP? So first of all, we're the general. Three Pillars is the general partnership on a property, right? We invite a KP to be a GP depending on the relationship. Now, why do we need a KP? We don't need a KP. We can do the deals ourselves, and we'll stop, giving opportunities such as this one we're talking about right now, and we can do them ourselves. But we're finding people. We're finding those people that we actually want to work with. It's not a one-time transactional relationship. It's a relationship that we want to see. Is there potential for long-term relationship? Because remember, you're in a property for a few years. You're not in a property for just a few months. You're in property at least for a couple of years or more, right? So we're looking for a long-term relationship. Can we do multiple deals? Can we grow a portfolio with this person? And we're very proud to say that we're actually doing that with some of our KPs. Mentioned Prasad's name a few minutes ago. You can see him on the homepage of the website. We have Tom and Chris and Kyle. Some of these, they want to be general partners on the deals. And, because we have a good relationship with them, we're considering them. So do we need to keep KPs? Absolutely not. So do we want them? It would be great to find good partners, yes. We had a question from Donna as far as how soon you will hear back after submitting the form. So sometime tomorrow, we'll get back to you with that. And, we'll take those next few steps to just start a dialogue, just get to know each other. As far as what you're looking for, what are your goals. We'll discuss that, see what the chemistry is like, and go from there. We had a good question from Tom Kang about would we be less inclined to work with the key principal from the Bay Area, and the answer is no. So we in fact have a couple of key principals from the Bay Area, and in fact there's an event coming up in San Francisco, and I urge you to attend that. The location doesn't matter. Like I said, the KP could be, from Fargo, North Dakota. And no offense to anybody from Fargo, North Dakota, but if you're adding value and, we see that we want to work with that person. Again, any questions related to profits, returns, anything like that, we would like to discuss that after we've had a couple of private conversations with you. It's not something that we can discuss in this forum. We had a question from Millard. If we find a deal outside of Houston, would we be interested? And the answer is absolutely yes. We had a question here as far, if you already didn't notice that, we're actually hosting a multifamily partnering summit. And in the summit, you can see the video of what the summit's about. We have CBRE, that's going to be the keynote speaker. He does a lot of debt financing for a lot of big syndicators here in Houston and in Texas. So you'll be able to add a lot of value about recourse and non-recourse debt. Then we have Jason Nybacken from IBC Insurance, who does insurance for multifamily. So he'll be able to give you a lot of insights into that. And obviously Josh is one of the keynote speakers as well. It's a whole day's event. So we're going to talk about, we're going to go visit some of the properties. We're going to go look at some of the work being done on the properties. There's going to be the keynote speakers, and then there's going to be the networking portion towards the end of the event. We actually have a couple of private equity capital raisers who are also attending this event. I'm not going to discuss their names. So obviously, these are people, for example, who invest in other people's deals. So the invitation to this deal is case by case. We want to, again, we're not just inviting anybody. We want to keep it small. And in fact, if some of you are going to be at the Lindell event, that, for example, they have 400 people attend those events or whatever number, it's really hard to actually build a relationship with someone in that kind of environment. So we're going to keep it up to 50 people so that we give ample opportunity to the attendees to network with one another and actually build a relationship. So here's the agenda and all that. Again, you can see that all on the website. Get a feel of what these events are all about. So. And again, I apologize if none of your questions were answered in this webinar. You will get a follow-up email. You can also ask your question in that follow-up email, and we'll be more than happy to answer that question. We had a question from Robert about being in Dallas-Fort Worth. And yes, we do have an event there, so stay tuned for that. All right, guys, so I'm starting to see a lot of repeat questions, but generally I think we've covered a broad range of topics. I think it'll be good to close the webinar now. I hope you enjoyed learning about the webinar. and what the opportunity is to be a key principal for, again, it's not for everyone, it's really for select individuals. So we'll talk about that once you fill out the form. We'll have a private conversation, go from there. But again, especially in this state in 2018, as of now, it's an extremely competitive market. Honestly, if you compare capital and deals, it's not the capital that's the problem, it's really the deals, right? And again, one gentleman mentioned that they're not able to find deals in the Bay Area where you're looking at 3 caps, 4 caps or less. I mean, how do you make sense of that? And it is difficult. So, as we gain density with our portfolio here in Houston, at least, we're able to have tremendous cost savings. Like I said, we're able to, so for example, let me give you an example, right? We're buying a property right now on the seller's expense, based on the seller's expenses, this is 6.5 cap. As soon as we take over, as soon as we take the keys at the title office from the owner and our management takes over, it's going to be an 8.5 cap, just like that, overnight, okay? Because some of the expenses that he faces, we would not face those expenses. Because that's we're gaining density in that market. We're able to operate the properties more efficiently. We're more hands-on. So anyway, I hope that gives you a good insight into our operation. We'd love to talk to you. If you feel that we would love working with you, reach out to us and we'll go from there. Thank you and have a good night.